So in today's walk and talk, I'm actually in the French rain, and I've just done a video on this MRG in the rain, and you're probably thinking, why is he in the rain? And that's because it's lovely here, and I wanted to go for a walk anyway to rest my eyes because I've been looking at the computer. And I am pretty wet now, but I thought I wanted to go for a walk anyway, and I'm going to shove this camera in front of my face and see where we get to. And today I thought, why don't I briefly mention Post Watches and Wonders 2023. So this year I was able to go, and it was very good because essentially you're in Geneva. Watches and Wonders right now is in Geneva, Switzerland. And I suppose that this yearly event used to be called, the Watches and Wonders has been the outplay of a Basel World not taking place. Basel World used to be in Basel, and I think and it used to represent all the watch brands in the world, really, and that's the point really of my video, because Watches and Wonders has really come out of the LVMH brands, so brands like Cartier and oops a daisy, I'm absolutely soaking wet here, don't know if you can see. I'm trying to avoid the rain. Anyway, so LVMH doesn't really, it represents about a third of all the watch brands in the world, but obviously it isn't Rolex, Richard Mille and the Swatch Group brands. So what that means is you've only got about a third there. Now, Watches and Wonders did invite brands like Rolex, and Rolex are there. And also Grand Seiko, and that is very good. And for me, it sort of begs the question, hold on a second, if Watches and Wonders is all the LVMH brands, like Cartier, IWC, JLC, and all the other, brands that are well known. And they've invited Rolex to be there, Patek Philippe and Grand Seiko. We know that the precedent has been set for, everyone to be there. And one of the things that, I was aware of, and I wondered if it would bother me, was because Basel World used to include G-Shock, Casio G-Shock. And I used to go to Basel World, and one of my highlights was going to the G-Shock booth, because you would actually see the new G-Shocks that were about to come out, and that was my highlight. And also the G-Shock people would always let me in and give me a coffee and sit me down and have a chin wag, and I always really liked that. I used to go to Basel World to see G-Shock. That was one of my draws, believe it or not. So I suppose the G-Shock thing has been deeply ingrained in me right from the beginning. Anyway, so going to Watches and Wonders, brands like Rolex would be there, JLC, Cartier, because I'm not really a Cartier watch fan, but I really do like their female watches, or the Cartier watches that are predominantly liked by females, because I think they are one of the number one watch brands for women. I hope you don't mind me saying that, but these days we know that one of the very popular watch models for ladies is the Rolex Daytona. And I would say in the last 2 years, I've probably seen more Daytonas, Rolex Daytonas, on the wrists of ladies, girls, than I've seen on men. And for me, that's really cool because they're a big watch, but they do suit a female wrist, I think. And always, you know, if you see a lady wearing a Rolex Daytona, you know something's going on there. And every time I've walked up to them and said, hey, why are you rocking that Daytona? And each time they've come out with a really cool story. And also their stories do include the fact that they really like it. It's not just their husband or boyfriend that they've stolen it from, but you know, they've been given it or they wanted it and they bought it themselves. And I thought, you know, that's so cool because you've chosen a really desirable watch there. And I've just realized that if I continue walking along here, I'm going to be covered. I'm going to be very wet, so I'm going to swing back in that direction. It's because I don't know if you can see my knees there, but my trousers are wringing wet because of the high grass. Anyway, so watches and wonders, LVMH brands plus guests like Rolex and Patek Philippe. And but I knew that the Swatch Group brands, namely Omega, wouldn't be there. I knew Richard Mille wouldn't be there, and lots of other independent watches would not be there, plus G-Shock would not be there. And believe me, at one point that made me think, hold on, do I really want to go to Watches and Wonders that doesn't have G-Shock? Because, you know, that's a deal breaker almost. And I thought, I'm going to experience it without G-Shock and see how we get on. Anyway, it was a little traumatic because I felt the G-Shock hunger, and it wasn't really, you know, what I wanted. You know, I did want to see that at Watches and Wonders Geneva. Anyway, so once again, my point for this video is Watches and Wonders and these yearly Switzerland hosted events. It really would be nice if all the watch brands were there. So we have the LVMH brands, we have the sorry, I've called it, am I thinking of Richmont? I'm sorry, I've said LVMH, I mean Richmont. Anyway, but all the brands there, LVMH, Richmont and Swatch Group, plus the big Teds like Rolex, I'm going to say Breitling there actually, Richard Mille, and all the other independent brands like MB&F, HEUER. I mean, you know, I'm going to miss brands if I have to think of them here. But it would be nice if Watches and Wonders was the place where all the brands turn up. And, you know, really, there's an underlying agenda here. I want G-Shock to be there. And I want Grand Seiko and Seiko to be there. I think the Japanese contingent has to be, you know, under the same roof as the Swiss watch industry. For some reason it works for me. I like the way the Japanese do these things. And so this year, even though, you know, some independent brands like Rolex and Patek were there, you know, so that's fine, but Richard Mille wasn't, and Omega wasn't, and Breitling wasn't, and Richard Mille, the Swatch, all of them, Breitling, these are big brand names. They're hugely significant in the watch industry. And I also thought to myself, imagine if Watches and Wonders had an Apple Watch booth or a presence there. And I thought, if I was running Apple Watch for Apple, I would most certainly want to be at Watches and Wonders. I'd want to be with all the Swiss boys with my Apple Watches, and not this, but I would want to be there. I don't know why, but I think that would be a smart move, because what you will find is that most people that actually wear an expensive Swiss watch or a Japanese watch, you'll find that they probably have an Apple Watch anyway also. And you know, if they're like, you know, the typical watch fan, they probably have several, you know, all the Apple Watch generations going back. Because what I am finding is the minute you find out someone likes wristwatches and they show you one watch that's pretty cool, you can bet your bottom dollar they have about 10 others. And I do find that so cool. I really do. And once again, it makes me think of the $70,000 solid gold G-Shock Square. Again, that in solid gold for real. You know, with a initial retail value of $70,000. And because there are only 35 on planet Earth that have been made, that thing rocks at about $100,000 now. And actually, you've heard the term Grail watch. I think I've said in another video, that is my Grail watch. That is the bad boy that I ultimately want. Anyway, so back to Watches and Wonders. It really would be nice if all the brands were there. So you can plonk yourself in one place, and if you're a watch fan of any description, you know that your brand is going to be there. And right now, Breitling, Richard Mille, MB&F, brands like HEUER, and the Swatch Group brands, Omega in particular, they are not there. And I don't know how you can have a watch event without Omega, because Omega is massive. The fan loyalty and the interest is huge. You know, Omega has to be there, but in my opinion, Richard Mille has to be there also, and Breitling, they have to be there. It's like having a really cool party, and you've got 15 really top friends, and 5 of your best friends have simply turned around and said, we don't feel we're invited. So, you know, how's that party going to rock if 5 out of 15 simply aren't there because, you know, they haven't been invited? Or maybe, you know, Swatch Group has been invited. Anyway, that's the point of this ramble. Watches and Wonders would be wonderful if all the watch brands were there, including the Japanese watch brands like Grand Seiko, Seiko, and in particular G-Shock, Casio G-Shock. And then Swatch Group, Omega, Richard Mille, Breitling, MB&F, HEUER, and all the other hugely fabulous independent wristwatch brands around the world. They all need to be there. I don't know how that's going to work. Will they all fit in Palexpo? In fact, what I would do is I would make sure they fit into Palexpo. So some of the guys in Palexpo this year that had these massive booths, like Cartier, for example, you've simply got to divvy it up and make sure you can squash the world's brands into Palexpo, get them all in there. And then, because, you know, it's a nice place. Baselworld did the same thing, although I think that the Baselworld venue was probably nicer because it had the river close by. You know, Geneva's nice as well, but anyway, but we need the world's watch brands under one roof for at least one event per year. That's what I think would be very cool. And as long as all those brands I've mentioned are there, it's going to be very good. Anyway, I do apologize for rambling and driving everyone nuts. And hopefully I've got my point across. All the brands need to be together one time in the year. And perhaps they should all come to London, actually. We should have a Watches and Wonders stroke Baselworld stroke London watch event finale a year. There you go. There's some ideas. Anyway, hope everyone's well and speak again soon.